Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, here with our weekly update here on Facebook Live. And we are also simulcasting, hopefully, on Twitter. So welcome you Twitter followers to our broadcast that we try to put on every week, bringing you up to date as to what this government watchdog group, Judicial Watch, is up to here in Washington, D.C., keeping an eye on the corrupt politicians that are running this city still, despite the elections taking place. You would think that things have changed. They haven't changed nearly as much as they should have, and I'll give you some updates in that regard. A lot to talk about. The Mueller investigation continues to expand and grow out of control, and I'll talk about why I think it needs to be shut down. A new important lawsuit against the Veterans Administration on behalf of someone whose constitutional rights were violated by VA officials. And then, of course, you've got the Obamacare exemption for Congress, which is not only in violation of law and set up by the Obama administration, but continues to this day. And it's an opportunity for some significant reform without anything having to be passed by Congress. And, of course, we've got some new lawsuits against the deep state that I want to talk to you about, specifically the EPA and what it was up to under the Obama administration. But first up, we've got this ongoing crisis caused by the creation of this special counsel investigation by Rod Rosenstein, who is the number 2 at the Justice Department, because Attorney General Sessions recused himself from doing anything related to Russia or even the Clinton emails, which is also notable. And so Rosenstein, thanks to Comey's machinations, appointed Mueller as special counsel. Now recall, Comey said he took these notes of his meetings with President Trump and then took them with him from the FBI, we would argue unlawfully, and then leaked them, we would argue also unlawfully, to the New York Times, or at least had them read to the New York Times by a buddy of his, a cutout, in order to get a special counsel investigation set up. So Comey, angry that he was fired, retaliated against the president through this gamesmanship to get his mentor, Mueller, appointed as special counsel. Now, Mueller is also a former FBI director. So you can expect that Mueller is compromised in all sorts of ways. First of all, by his relationship with Comey. Secondly, by the situation that Comey created that allowed his appointment to take place at all. And then thirdly, by, frankly, his inability to, in my view, look at the FBI in an honest way, because at issue, or at least at issue for any serious investigation, would be how the FBI was misused, its counterintelligence capabilities, to spy on the Trump team. So obviously, I don't think Mueller is going to be the type of guy who's going to do that, since he was involved in a situation where Fox News Channel's James Rosen was spied upon for specious reasons by Mueller's FBI. So I don't think he should be the special counsel as it is. But on top of that, now he's hired his 15th lawyer. His 15th lawyer. You know, I've asked around, and I've done some research on this, and I'm not aware of any independent or Justice Department investigation that has 15 lawyers on it. It just doesn't happen. You have a few lawyers at most, maybe 5 or 6 for serious cases, but the idea there are 15 lawyers on this Russia collusion investigation. Of course, we don't really know what the investigation's about, since it's all just rumor mongering. Only in Washington do you have a criminal investigation to investigate rumors. But this is an out-of-control investigation, and he just hired a top deputy of Preet Bharara. Now, who is this Preet Bharara? He was a U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. He had a good reputation because he prosecuted both Republicans and Democrats up in New York. The headline is, of course, that New York has a corruption problem. It's not much of a headline, but it's there. And they did some investigations and prosecutions to a point up in New York. But his top deputy, who did a lot of these anti-corruption work, investigations and prosecutions, is now working at Mueller's office. He was just hired. Now, Preet Bharara is in the news because he's repeatedly attacking President Trump, And he's obviously angry at President Trump because he supposedly was promised that he'd keep his job as U.S. Attorney, but he was fired, along with every other U.S. Attorney by President Trump. So people are wondering why it is they would bring someone in like that to Mueller's investigation. So you've got this burgeoning investigation, investigating what, I don't know. And then, of course, there are constitutional concerns, which I've talked about before, that Mueller isn't a Senate-confirmed official. He's not supervised in a day-to-day by a Senate-confirmed official or someone with the authority of a U.S. attorney or prosecutor. That authority just doesn't come out of whole cloth. It comes from our Republican rules of government, and Republican being small r. So if someone's going to be prosecuted by the federal government, it's got to be by someone who's been authorized to do so as a result of being vetted or being supervised by someone who's been vetted through the Senate confirmation process and the appointments process. And here, this special counsel, at least the regulations, the way it's currently set up, is that they brought in this outside lawyer and told him to go to town. And those people that we expect to do the taxpayer-based oversight ain't doing it. At best, they can come in after the fact and clean up his mess and tell him he can't do something. But by then, the damage has been done. So what is Mueller investigating? We still don't know. There's no evidence of collusion between the Trump team and the Russians on whatever the Russians supposedly did. And then secondly, is there a really serious obstruction of justice issue because Mueller or Comey was fired by President Trump, or President Trump as president suggested that Comey take a second look at any investigation into General Flynn? I don't think so. So we've got this expansive investigation into what? So I think there are constitutional issues, there are ethics issues because of Mueller's relationship with Comey, and then there are sort of basic good government issues with this investigation that's just growing out of control without adequate supervision by the government. So if I were President Trump or the responsible official in the Justice Department, I'd shut it down. I say, look, we don't need a special counsel, or I'm going to write the regulations in a way that makes the special counsel truly accountable to the rule of law under our system of government. And we're going to have someone who is brought in who has the authority constitutionally. Of course, that needs to be said. And secondly, is going to have the faith and full confidence of both sides of the aisle that they can do something honestly in terms of anything that's serious that needs to be investigated. And so that obviously, in my view, Mueller doesn't fit that bill. He doesn't fit that bill. He's compromised as a result of his relationship with Comey. And it doesn't mean that Mueller did anything wrong. It just means he can't be the special counsel. So I'd shut it down. So I was saying that in response to 15 lawyers being hired by Mueller. By the way, don't believe me, you can read it in the Washington Post. 7 of those 15 lawyers gave to Democratic candidates. 7 of them. And I think 5 of them gave to Hillary Clinton. Why on earth would they think that sort of hiring spree would instill confidence that the investigation would be fair and dispassionate? I just think this is, when you hire the numbers of lawyers they're talking about, they're not talking about enforcing the rule of the law. This is a posse that's been gathered to go after President Trump, his family, and people close to him. And I think it's just a mess. And the Justice Department needs to get this back under control. And if they won't do it, the president, however politically difficult it will be for him to do it, he should make sure that it's done. So that's the latest. One of the things about this special counsel investigation is it also conveniently protects records from being given to the American people. So we want those Comey memos, for instance. You know what the response we got back is? Well, you can't have them because there's this law enforcement investigation going on. Well, isn't that convenient? So this information is leaked to the New York Times. Comey leaks it on purpose. He takes the records and he leaks them to the New York Times. It results in the appointment of a special counsel. And we ask for the same records and we're told no because the special counsel investigation is going on. talk about a catch-22 that's unjust. I mean, obviously we're going to be fighting this in court, but isn't that convenient? I just can't tell you how significant it is that this special counsel investigation is growing as large as it is without the accountability. And I know, people tend to move on here in Washington, but I tell you, it needs to be put under control, and it's not. And so Judicial Watch is going to do our Freedom of Information Act work to figure out what it's up to as appropriate, but because seemingly no one else wants to ask the tough questions about what the budget of this entity is, just how much taxpayer resources are being spent on chasing, as I've always called it, the unicorn theory of the election, that somehow Trump and the Russians colluded on stealing the election from under Hillary Clinton's nose. And there's no evidence of that, and so there should be no criminal investigation. I just can't tell you how serious a threat this is to our constitutional system of government when you're able to abuse the powers of government to go after a newly elected official on specious issues like this. So this is something we'll be tracking. Next up, we had an important new lawsuit that we pursued on behalf, and we've told you about Robert Rosebrock in the past because we represented him in a criminal case out in Los Angeles. He's been consistently protesting outside a massive VA facility in Los Angeles that's supposed to, under its deed, be used exclusively to help veterans, for the purposes of helping veterans. And obviously, he thinks they're not doing that because, according to our research, they use this the non-veteran related purposes for this VA facility, which is 338 acres, I believe, 388 acres in the middle of Los Angeles. They use it for a baseball stadium for the UCLA baseball team, athletics fields for a private preparatory school, and a dog park. So we've done FOIAs asking about that. So he's protesting, and he was taking pictures. He had placed some flags allegedly on a fence, and he was prosecuted for all that. And the court ruled you can't prosecute him for taking photographs, and he acquitted him of the charge related to placing the two small 6-inch flags on this giant fence. And you go to our website, you can see the video and some of the other material about this. So since then, he's been acquitted, and he's not facing criminal charges anymore, although outrageously, I understand the government's pursuing an appeal of those court's rulings. So the VA really has it in for Mr. Rosebrock. And he shows, as I said, shows up every week. He and some other veterans show up almost every week protesting the misuse of this facility. And he's been doing it for almost a decade. And so we sued the VA police officers who arrested him, and as one news media report, cuffed and stuffed him in the back of a car for taking photographs. So we already found that he can't be prosecuted for taking the photographs. So, they had it in for Robert because he's a whistleblower. He's blowing the whistle on the misuse of this Veterans Affairs facility. And this is a case of the VA bureaucracy going wild. He faced an unlawful arrest and a retaliatory prosecution for holding the VA to account. So we're proud to represent Mr. Rosebrock. We already had significant victories on his behalf because he was facing jail if he had been prosecuted successfully. And so now we're pursuing civil litigation to hold them to account for the violating his constitutional rights. So be sure to track that issue as well on our internet site. And of course, we'll keep you briefed here. So what are they going to do about Obamacare? Judicial Watch has been in the center of many of the Obamacare controversies over the years. I guess it was passed in 2010. And but one of the outrages is that Obamacare was never really enforced. They always had to carve out exemptions to the law as written. Sometimes it was a lawful way of doing it, and oftentimes there was an unlawful way of doing it. And one of the exemptions that were unlawful was the exemption for Congress. So under the original Obamacare bill, Congress needed to participate in Obamacare. And because Congress is a large employer, the only way that Congress could participate in Obamacare was on an individual basis. So members and staff would have had to participate on an individual basis. And under Obamacare, you can't use employer subsidies to purchase insurance. You have to, it comes out of your own pocket. Well, that was not something that Congress wanted to do. So what they did was they worked with Obama, and this was a Republican-Democratic conspiracy, to carve out an exemption from this law requiring Congress to fully participate in Obamacare. And what they did was they created a fraudulent application to the D.C. Health Exchange that said Congress has less than 45 employees, and is in a small business, and is a small business. They have 20,000 employees. So they're fraudulently participating in the Small Business Exchange here in the District of Columbia, which we're suing over separately. And they're also illicitly getting taxpayer-subsidized insurance premium support. So that's not right. It's not legal. So that issue isn't coming up in this whole debate about how to repeal Obamacare, reform it, or such. And we could go on and on about what they should do there. Personally, I think they should repeal it, as promised, so this issue would be resolved. But evidently, they don't want to repeal it. But what also isn't going to be addressed is this illegal Obamacare exemption. So what Judicial Watch did is that we put the pressure, we've always been pushing Congress to fix it, but we've also now pressured the Trump administration and the HHS. So we filed there's this process that the Centers for Medicaid Services, which is the key Obamacare administrator within the Department of Homeland, within the HHS, they were gathering input as to how to reform, regulatorily at least, the Obamacare monstrosity. So we, Judicial Watch did, we filed a request that they fix the Obamacare congressional exemption. They end it. So CMS can end it, the Office of Personnel Management can end it, and it would require Congress to participate, as I suggested, correctly in the Obamacare healthcare process. Now that would put pressure on Congress to do the right thing, because if they're in the Obamacare mess that so many other Americans are stuck in, they might actually repeal it. But they've been protected from the effects of Obamacare illegally. And the Trump administration can change it in a drop of a hat. Congress can change it at a drop of the hat. And they're relying on the fact that not many people understand what's happening to keep taking your money illicitly and keep on breaking the law. And I would suggest you let the White House know what you think about this, and you let your members of Congress know what you think about this. Because this is a conspiracy that cuts across both parties. Liberals and conservatives do it. Now, not everyone in Congress is supportive of this illegal activity, and some refuse to participate in it. But the Trump administration should just wash their hands of it and say, look, you're gonna have to participate the way in Obamacare as the law is written, and the way other Americans do. And hopefully we can get it ended through our lawsuit. But it's on appeal, and it's been on appeal for some time now. But in the meantime, this can be done administratively. We've got this issue of the deep state. We talked about this with the Russia collusion issue, with the intelligence agencies under Obama spying on Trump and his people and then leaking stuff illegally over 100 times by one account. I just read, Kim Strassel has a good piece in the Wall Street Journal about this yesterday. I think it's 125 illicit leaks targeting Team Trump. 125 illegal leaks. But their deep state goes broader than just the intelligence agencies. You've got the deep state, the other government agencies as well. And on top of that, you need accountability for what went on during the Obama administration. So that's why we sued the EPA twice recently. First of all, to get information on its war on coal, because you may recall they had a regulatory change after they couldn't get it passed through Congress. Obama uses his pen and phone routine to bypass Congress and write laws on his own. widely unconstitutional, talk about authoritarian. And so he did that repeatedly with the EPA on issues related to so-called global warming. And so and they did a revised clean power plant plan that would essentially have made it impossible to build new coal plants and shut down a lot of current coal plants. And they said they had, doing that would protect anywhere from 2,700 to 6,600 premature deaths by 2030. So we all know that usually this information that they come up with, these supposed savings and benefits of these outrageous regulations are suspect. So that's why we sued for those records. So we've got that lawsuit trying to figure out about what the Obama administration's EPA was up to with by bypassing Congress and what their so-called science was behind their justification for having this onerous clean power rule, which I think is now going to be repealed by the Trump administration. Also, as part of their effort to brainwash us, the EPA, it looks like, engaged in illicit propaganda, and they used this platform called, Thunderclap, which allows you to send out multiple and coordinated social messages, messages across social media platforms. And already the GAO found that its use of this by the EPA constitutes covert propaganda. And this was, again, another Obama EPA power grab. The Waters of the United States rule, which would have greatly expanded government oversight over, essentially the puddle that forms, I'm being sarcastic and exaggerating, but puddles that form on your property could have been subject to could have made your property and your use of that property subject to government oversight. We've seen story after story of that happening even under the old interpretations. Their new interpretations of President Obama would have made it even worse. So the GAO found that the EPA's use of this was propaganda, barred by law. And so Judicial Watch is suing to get information about that. So this is an opportunity for the Trump administration to get information out to the American people about the constitutional overreach and lawlessness of the Obama EPA, and I hope they do that. So we've got a lot on our plates. We're suing to figure out what's going on with the Russia collusion scandal, which is really the Obama spying scandal. We're even monitoring now the special counsel investigation as best we're able to under the Freedom of Information Act. We're suing on behalf of a citizen activist whistleblower who's trying to take on this massive Veterans Affairs agency and its misuse of a major property out in Los Angeles. And we've got lawsuit after lawsuit. I've just listed two of them against the 8 government agencies that were so terribly abused under President Obama's administration. So Judicial Watch is doing the work that Congress doesn't do, that the media doesn't do, and frankly, this administration has been slow to do because they haven't put enough people in place to take control and get the government to be more transparent and accountable to the American people. But in the meantime, you can rely on Judicial Watch to do the key watchdog work here in Washington, D.C. I thank you all who support us, and I encourage those of you watching who don't support us to learn more about our work and support it as well. I'll see you next week. Tom Fitton signing out.